Den.
We are live, not from the donut den, but from Southern California, coast to coast, with the nutritionist you like the most, Monika Klein, nutritionist of the
Hello,
season.
everyone.
I'm the infamous Dr.
Happy
Christopher
to be
Vogelmann.
here.
Yes,
Happy to have you here.
You're going to have me.
No, I meant everyone, and you, of course. But
and me too. You're going to have me over for donuts?
Okay, so this is this interesting story because we were going to talk today about how not, and maybe it's still too soon to call it the COVID. Well, we could call it.
No, it's easily the COVID-19 or the COVID-20 because the freshman 15 is real. So
yeah, so we want to avoid putting extra weight on during this period of time. So, I jokingly messengered Christopher before this, and I said, well, we could call it COVID 2020. You get 20 pounds, I get 20 pounds.
Except that I lost weight, I was going to give you both those 20s.
Yeah, and I don't want them.
You don't want them? Okay.
But one of my aides keeps bringing donuts to our home, and
charming.
I mean, I can't remember the last time I've had a donut, but
I think you can.
Well, now I can because I had one or two in the last week or so, and it's got to stop because that's a great way to put on these 20 pounds or 10 pounds. Because when you're secluded, when you're isolated and sequestered, like I am, and many of you are, you're kind of like at the mercy of who's going to bring what to you when.
Right. And it's not even Instacart or Shipped or somebody like that. It's the well-meaning friends and aides who stop by.
Yeah, well, or work here.
Or work there, yeah. Great.
So, I cannot tell him not to eat the donuts, but I can tell you
don't bring the donuts.
But you're in this environment, and even if you are able to go out a little bit and shop a little bit, there's a frustration and anxiety that commonly when we're in this state, we're looking for sugar, we're looking for fat, we're looking for something to quell the anxiety for sure.
Well, yeah, we're looking to manage our mood with input in the form of food.
Yeah, because that's something we can control.
Right.
I mean, we can control not necessarily the shopping part of it, but certainly what we put in our mouth, we can control. So I've always said, it's not what you're eating, it's what's eating you.
Right.
And we have a lot of things that are eating us right now, whether it's, our own health, health of our loved ones, and an ability to be free and walk around and do as we please for the most part, and also the economy. What's going to happen? Severe state of anxiety for most people. Mm-hmm. So we're reaching for things like alcohol, sugar, fat, anything to stop the feelings, that we have, the emotions that we have.
Well, self-medication is always dangerous. Doesn't matter if you're using pharmaceuticals or you're using food as a drug.
Yeah, I mean, things like, habitual things like looking at your phone or watching, Netflix on and on. What are we calling it? Yes, binging. We've been calling it binging forever. So
binge watching was preceded by binge eating.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yes, and binge drinking too. But that's a whole other.
I'm binging on water right now. So.
Binge, alcohol, excessive alcohol consumption, but that's a whole other.
Well, and mind you, I just had a conversation with John Paduchek, who's one of my friends. We're doing a live in about an hour. And John was mentioning to me, he says, the liquor stores in New Hampshire have given 10% bonuses to their employees because apparently liquor stores are just booming, at least in New Hampshire, which tells you that people are consuming a lot of alcohol, perhaps, in that area. And I mean, the thing about it was really interesting because we've always talked about fat burning. And when we have done weight loss programs, I had a weight loss clinic. You've done a lot of work with people losing excess fat.
We have a book on weight loss.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. And the funny thing is that alcohol actually stops the fat burning process. Yes. So if you had alcohol plus donuts,
You're in trouble.
It do not be good for you.
Well, alcohol, donuts, potato chips. I mean, just all the snack foods. And, people think that snack foods are much more accessible. They're convenience foods. They're much more accessible than real whole foods, but they aren't. And even if you're, watching your pennies and you have not a lot of income, it's always better to choose the nutrient dense food, real food coming out of the garden.
Well, most people aren't gardening. I mean, most people are dependent upon grocery stores.
Well, the thing is, the whole idea is that the closer a food is to Mother Nature, the more beneficial it is for you. And right now we're talking about, building your immune system up and building, your health up. And this is the exact time that we should be really, really paying attention to what we're eating, because in all honesty, that's going to quell some of your anxiety as well.
Right.
It's the sugar and the salt and the alcohol and the fat. The fat tends to calm you down a little bit for a period of time.
We're basically fat burning machines. So
yes, fat burning, not glucose burning, which a lot of the foods that we're consuming are glucose. So we're just burning glucose, and then the fat gets stored in various parts of our
and don't forget your fructose. People think, we're going to eat a lot of fruit. It's going to be good for me because fruits and vegetables are good, but the fructose gets converted to glucose. So
and agave, everyone, hopefully people are beginning to understand the agave is just like fructose. Mm-hmm. So it's difficult for the liver to break down these kinds of sugars in your body, and that's going to cause a multitude of problems, not only with your immune system but also with liver functioning and pancreas functioning, et cetera, et cetera. So we talked about how the COVID virus can affect the weakest link, even though the outcome is usually pneumonia. But if any part of your body is compromised, you may not have a disease per se, but you may be out of balance. It's going to affect you. It's going to affect that part of you.
And I think people need to understand you don't have to have a diseased or diseased organ. It just could be an organ that's not functioning. It's functional. Maybe your liver is not as high functioning as it should be, or your kidneys aren't as high functioning, or God forbid your brain isn't as high functioning as it should be.
And people think that alcohol consumption is the only thing that's going to negatively affect your liver, and that is not so. We just talked about some of the sugars, and certainly there's non-alcoholic fatty liver, which is strongly correlated to what you're eating. Diabetes as well, strongly always.
And you have that access back and forth between the pancreas and the liver. What happens with one affects the other.
And the gallbladder's involved here. Right. So we really want to encourage everyone to just start, go back to square one. And, of course, this is a crisis. Of course, this is an unusual circumstance, but we all go through these challenging times personally, not necessarily globally, but personally we do, and we get through them.
Well, and there are healthy choices you can make. So let's say that your grocery store has run out of fresh vegetables. You still have the option of ordering frozen. You can pick up, even in a pinch, I'd rather have a can of spinach than no spinach. So there has to be, you look at sort of a hierarchy of nutrients and freshness, and having something raw versus cooked, overcooked, lightly steamed, those types of things. So there's a whole series of choices, both in terms of what you can have delivered or what you shop for, even if the shelves are not completely stocked as much as they used to be.
There's definitely a hierarchy. There's like fresh, organic, fresh. Then we go to frozen, I guess, and then canned.
Well, you did frozen organic, frozen conventional. Then
yes, exactly.
Yeah, and we've done the same thing, because we've had a lot of organic produce we can't get, so we just went conventional. But I'd rather have the conventional produce than zero produce.
Now, again, I know we've had this conversation in past live
Past lives. In our
conversations.
I'd like in our past lives.
That too. We probably were farmers or middlemen, merchants, or I don't know what. But
I was just an eater.
We have a love of natural health.
Yes.
We definitely have a love of good, wholesome food. Yeah. And so whether it came from our past life or I mean, I could honestly say my mother had this incredible garden when I was growing up, and she loved the land. She could grow gardens and she could grow children.
Yeah. My mom had a flower garden next to the vegetable garden. That was very interesting. There was always a competition each year to figure out who would get the most acreage. So, flowers versus vegetables.
Ours was, it was people used to go out on their lawn chairs and tan when I was growing up, right? So it was every year the garden would encroach more and more, take up more and more of that space. So we would have very little area to sun ourselves. So, but it was like, you take it for granted when that is the case. And, and that's sort of like at the same time that, chemical, boxed foods were starting to become very, very popular. Well, not starting to, they were the popular ones, the Kellogg's and all the cereals and all the breakfast foods. And they're not really breakfast food. They're breakfast snacks.
They're like the product 19 versus the COVID, sorry.
Yeah. So it is, so I grew up in this plethora of fresh fruits and vegetables, not really realizing how valuable this was. Mm-hmm. And that's what I learned, and I learned to love it. And you learn to know what things taste like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The peach tastes like a peach, not like some sort of mealy, watery, tasteless piece of fruit. Are you frozen?
Yeah, and that's the great thing about farmers markets.
I thought you froze.
That's the great. Was I paused? That's the great thing about farmers markets too. Yeah. They taste so fresh compared to some of the bigger supermarkets.
Well, we have a big find in our backyard because we actually have artichokes that are growing, and we are harvesting them, and they taste amazing.
I miss having artichokes in my garden. I didn't have them where I grew up in Canada, but in Malibu, where we used to live, we also had an organic garden, which was...
I remember pictures of your organic garden. It was big.
Yeah, it was big, and we had a pomegranate tree just outside our window. But back to, I don't have that anymore, and you don't have that anymore.
No, I just have artichokes.
Yeah, so you have artichokes, and I think I have lemons outside the door and rosemary, so that's good.
Yeah.
And so I have not had any trouble finding fresh groceries.
Really?
At all. Through this entire period when I've had people shop for me. They may not have avocados that day, but they'll have broccoli and asparagus and yams and just almost everything. Red onions.
It's getting a little easier, but I can tell you 2 weeks ago, it was very difficult to find fresh produce here, at least, except for the farmer's market.
And, potatoes have been very maligned in recent years, such a starch as a starch, but they are chock full of good nutrients.
Hey, you got vitamin C in a potato. Nobody ever thinks about that. So.
And, one of the curses when I was growing up was someone had to peel the potatoes.
Oh, no. My dad did that. My dad did that in a conservation camp many decades ago. He had a
conservation camp. Okay.
Yeah, not a concentration camp, a conservation camp.
I've never heard of a conservation camp. They were growing things and saving things, and
they were like the WPA programs where they actually would, they would build parks and do all kinds of things. So wonderful. But he wound up peeling a lot of potatoes, and he eventually became the butcher of the camp. So a side of a cow would come in, and he would slice it up into steaks and do ground beef and everything. So maybe that's where he got his inspiration to go to chiropractic school and start dissecting human bodies, practicing on cows.
Maybe.
I don't know. But anyway,
long
story short, he could not stand peeling potatoes anymore. So my mother always had to peel the potatoes.
So it was usually my mother and my father, because we were feeding like at least 10 people. And if we had company, a lot more. But so we had to learn how to peel potatoes. Yeah. They did it and we did it. So now I don't peel the potatoes. I mean, we haven't been peeling potatoes for 15 years. We wash it really well, and we put the peel in the food and we eat the peels. I mean, it became very famous in the last 25 years, people eating potato peels with all this other stuff in it, right?
Actually, my mother, towards the end of World War II, because she was in Germany, she would actually eat potato peelings that were often fed to the pigs. She would grab some and eat, because food was very scarce in Germany.
Yeah, food was rationed. That's right. And they certainly have an appreciation of, my parents went through this too, and there was, anyone who grew up at that time in Europe knows what was going on. And we have never had that, and nor do we have it now.
No.
We really don't.
We're sitting pretty when it comes to food supply. There are some distribution issues, and the distribution channels have been disrupted a bit, but we're in far better shape than, say, post-World War II Europe.
However, I think we still need to feel real great gratitude and not be excessive in anything right now.
Right.
Excessive in our eating, excessive in any kind of purchase. Well, I don't know if people are still being excessive in purchasing, but I think there's a recognition now that we have been very excessive. And
we've actually had a lot of soups and stews and other things like that here. And I can tell you that our portions have actually, for the most part, been smaller in the last several weeks.
Yeah. And when I say excessive, I'm also talking about everything, not just eating.
Well,
we're talking about food right now.
Yeah. I don't know how many Lamborghinis, Maseratis, or diamond necklaces are being purchased currently.
No.
Also.
But we don't know. Who knows really, but let's, so back to food, things like try and have your 3 meals a day, or have 2 meals, like your breakfast around 10 or 11. I'm not, 10 or 11. And then your dinner, maybe 4 or 5 earlier, I call it sunch, because it's sort of supper and lunch.
Sunch.
Or
I call it linner.
Linner.
It's better than brunch.
But it's the best time to eat, not like at 7 or 8 at night when, it's only a few hours, 3 or 4 hours before.
The pattern of the old German farmers is what my parents had when I was in elementary school. So what they would do is, we'd have a little bit of breakfast, we'd go off to school, and we actually came home for lunch, because the school was only 2 blocks away. So we came home. We had a full dinner at the noon hour. And so we might have, maybe there was chicken, and there was 2 vegetables, a salad. There was, and maybe even a tiny bit of dessert. Rarely do we have dessert at the noontime, but that was our dinner, which was the noon meal. And if you know about traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic and others.
Ayurveda.
Your digestive system is at its peak efficiency between 1 and 2. Between 12 and 2.
Actually, between 10 and 2. That's when the heat, when the sun is up in the sky, that's also when your heat is greatest in your digestive system. It's called Agni in Ayurveda. So because they kind of focus so much on the natural cycles of nature, the cycles of nature. And our evening meal really was supper. It was soup and sandwiches, something like that, something very light. And that was it. Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. Well, we kind of had soup and sandwiches for lunch, and we did have bigger meals like I don't know. We did have sauerkraut, which wasn't my favorite, but it's a very good thing to have to balance your.
I love sauerkraut. Those fermented. Get those little beneficial bacteria into your system.
Yeah. Kimchi and sauerkraut and all sorts of fermented foods like that help to balance your gut microbiome. So yes, we just want to eat smaller. That would be good because we're really not doing a lot physically. Most of us, we're all mostly staying at home, so we're not expending all that energy. So why would we have to eat more or eat like we were eating?
It's a good question.
We don't. So for breakfast, for example, I had a little bit of vanilla yogurt with a cut up apple and some almonds. I'm good for like 3 or 4 hours now.
That's good.
And drinking, because often when you think you're hungry, you're actually dehydrated. We have to talk about dehydration and hydration because we do on every one of these, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, and that's, I've often, when I was working on a lot of patients back in practice, I think very typically people come with tension headaches. And a lot of times the suboccipital muscles right at the base of the skull, right back in there, were an early sign of dehydration. Yeah. And as soon as you got somebody drinking some water, we had the little water cooler in our office, their headaches started disappearing. And who's the fellow who's in Virginia, the Iranian fellow, Dr. Bettman Gelich? He wrote the book called The Water Cure. Mm-hmm. And he was imprisoned by the Shah of Iran back after prior to the Iranian Revolution in 79. And he was only given, when they found out he was a doctor, he was not going to be executed, but he had to take care of the prisoners. And the only thing he had was water. And so for a lot of the prisoners, he would find the right amount of water to make many of their symptoms go away.
I mean, we could call it, well, it is the most essential nutrient, if we want to call it nutrient, but it is essential. It's absolutely essential. Yeah. And so, and you can overdo it as well. We have to put a caveat there too. So, even water can be overdone, even a good thing.
It's called drowning.
Yeah. Yeah. Even though if you're not submerged, it's still called, you're kind of submerging your insides.
Well, yeah. And if you have too much fluid, like in congestive heart failure, you get too much fluid in the lungs. And the same thing with some of the COVID cases with pneumonia, the lungs just fill up and you're drowning in your own fluids.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's too much.
Yeah. And I know that, I did want to give you a report about my brother. I did talk to him again this week, and he's now been moved to a different facility for rehab. So that'll include speech and physical therapy. So that's a good step towards healing, and it's going to be a long journey. I mean, strokes are not easy to recover from. His is primarily speech. His ambulation is good.
And this stroke was COVID related, you mentioned.
Yes, they said that COVID complications. Now, right. I think there's going to need to be a lot of investigation after all of the crisis has passed to really figure out what is what and
Well, it's a very complex chain of cause and effect. Anytime you have one thing hits the lungs, it can affect your brain, it can affect the heart, it can affect a whole series of other organs. And so you have this cascading effect through all the different systems of the body.
I don't think it affected his lungs, though. So
interesting.
I don't think he didn't have those symptoms. And so it's only one of the symptoms, but it's where people, their morbidity is caused from the lung damage or lung infiltration. So that is still to be investigated. Because the symptoms that people. I mean, we've gone through the symptoms: the fever, the
coughing, the dry cough,
the
chest
breathing,
pain,
chest pain, that kind of thing. So, so you might not have all of them. You might have just one or two, which could lead. I would think that the coughing would be less severe than the chest pain, but the chest pain could also be anxiety. I think a lot of people are feeling that, and it might very well not just, but be anxiety.
There can be some significant restriction in breathing. I mean, I've had one episode of pneumonia in my life. It was back in 87. I took my New York State board exam with a full-blown case of mycoplasma pneumonia. I self-diagnosed. I was so good at physical diagnosis. I diagnosed myself, and I was like, well,
I love that.
I got to take
I mean, I
gotta
don't
finish
know
the
if you had
exam.
it, but it's interesting to diet.
Well, and there's a big caveat to this, because I, at that time, did not take any antibiotics or anything, which drove my radiology instructor crazy. I actually did the Linus Pauling vitamin C thing. And I'm going to say, hey, kids, don't try this at home. I made a very informed decision to do this, and I was taking 42,000 milligrams of vitamin C. We're talking about bowel tolerance, until such time as the waste system started getting loose, and then I cut it down over several days to 26,000 milligrams of vitamin C, and eventually I had myself in the 10 to 15 range, and the pneumonia completely disappeared. But very few people should ever try this unless they're under the direct supervision of a physician.
Yeah. Well, there are definitely therapeutic protocols for various things, nutritional protocols. So, but back to eating.
Let's do some eating. I'm hungry.
I hope we've, So you want to stick with the basics. You want to have a healthy breakfast, or 2 meals a day. It doesn't need to be 3 meals a day. It could be 3
Well, what
small
about
meals.
the five tiny meals?
The 5, that's not for everyone. See, there is no way of eating for everyone, although there are some ways that are beneficial for most people.
Right.
I think, again, back to not exercising as much, not being physically active as much. We need to reduce our amounts. Now, we need strength and energy, of course, to function in this kind of crisis environment.
And if you starve yourself by going too far and not eating, you can't get sufficient glucose to the brain, because the brain lives on glucose.
No, we don't. I mean, we want to be realistic. We want to be healthy. We don't want to be make unhealthy choices. There are no extremes. This is not time for extremes or excessiveness. This is time
for preservation and sustaining. Yeah.
Yeah. And eggs. I know that eggs were hard to find for a while. I'm not sure right now, but
it's easier now, and the price is dropping. So.
Yeah. Okay. So, so then salads. I have this really great salad that I love to make. It's arugula with a spring mix. Mm-hmm. You can get them everywhere. You can get bags of those things everywhere, or even at farmers markets, of course. And then I'll cut up some red onion, some radishes, some cucumbers, and some feta cheese I'll put in there. So I'll get my protein.
Yeah.
And a little bit of balsamic or apple cider vinegar and some olive oil. Delicious. And very satisfying and sustaining.
It sounds remarkably similar to what we had yesterday. We had 2 hard-boiled eggs cut up with a salad, and it was just, full of everything from onions to tomatoes and an organic spring mix, because we can still get some of the organic stuff. Nobody seems to want to eat salads, so that's apparently quite plentiful.
Really? No one wants to eat salads? Well, that's why we're talking about salads, because they are, and today it's going to be 80 degrees here in Los Angeles, in the LA area. I'm not sure if you are probably.
We are always a little cooler than you are, because we're right next to the ocean. So we get ocean breezes here. We're about 5-block walk from the Pacific. So
I'm 10 minutes away from Malibu, and let's see what Malibu is doing today.
We can look up the weather while we're live.
73. So they are, I've got my phone.
So it is cool. It's a little bit cooler here. Yeah, it always tends to be cooler by the shore. Yeah.
But last year it was not. It was just as warm here. Like, I'm talking about the summer right into November, when the fires were. I mean, that's another crisis I don't even want to talk about right now.
Don't talk about fires.
Yeah, it was warm all around. So, but it's going to go back down again. But heat is an important component to, I want to say fighting this, but keeping yourself warm and healthy and safe.
Yeah, and I think one of the challenges, people will resort to try to reduce a fever, and typically nowadays people are concerned about not using ibuprofen or other NSAIDs, and instead they're saying use acetaminophen or Tylenol. And the challenge is you can overdo Tylenol. There's a story that I had read several years back. You may have known this one too, about an NFL player who had chronic knee pain, and as part of his regime of recovering from his rehabilitation, he took as many as 22 Tylenol a day, and wound up with organ failure.
Crazy. So, I'm sure I heard it in the ethers over the years, but I mean, you know,
don't do that.
Crazy kinds of things happen. Do not do that. Do go back to traditions of the way people used to eat, you know, our parents, and, you know, before everything was boxed and bagged, and, you know, the more natural, the healthier it is for you. You know, the closer to Mother Nature is the closer a food is to Mother Nature, the better it is for you. It's so important, and it's so basic and so simple, really. I've been preaching this for like 20 plus years, and you know, I'm not saying it's always easy, but I think that should be your guide.
This was not at St. Monica's Church of the Holy Nutrients, was it?
Santa Monica.
Santa Monica. St. Monica.
I suppose. I live right next to a Catholic church, and so
I'm sure they had mass with just the priest there.
Nothing's happening there right now.
There's not a lot happening in the church.
No. But yeah, I mean, it is, you know, the key nutrients and healthy foods, and, you know,
and back to and I think it's avoiding the excess if you can, because that's where we get in trouble with the donuts, the cookies, the pastries,
excess
all that
even
kind of stuff.
Excess even of good foods.
Yeah, I mean, that's the irony. I mean, people would tell me sometimes, well, I had a couple of vegan patients years ago, and they would say, well, I buy everything at Whole Foods. And you would look at them, but they were buying the wrong things in the wrong proportions. So,
or I'm, you know, gluten-free, and they'd buy a lot of
stuff. Lots of gluten-free cookies, lots of them.
Yeah, with all sorts of questionable ingredients.
I am finding that as long as there's not any ice cream in the house, I'm pretty good in terms of actually going way down in my sugar consumption. And as a result, because it hasn't been in the house, I actually wound up losing weight during this stay-at-home thing.
It's a hard thing to buy.
Yeah.
Certainly when I'm waiting for volunteers or friends to pick up groceries, you know, you have to wait in line. Your ice cream's going to melt. You know,
that's the thing. Food. Instacart and ice cream do not get along with each other.
No. So I've been making these roast chickens in my clay pot. This is called a Rummeltopf, I believe that's what it's called. So I put onions and garlic in there, and cut up some carrots, and I put the roaster in. I make some yams. I did some I also boiled some beets. And that's going to last for, 3 or 4 days. And then I'm going to make some chicken curry with the extra chicken. I mean, that's a whole, 3 to 4 or 5 days.
Well, root vegetables keep really well. I mean, everything from carrots to turnips to, So I think that's part of the thing too, because we've ordered a lot of cabbage, and we make a lot of different things with cabbage and other cruciferous vegetables, the Brussels sprouts and things like that, because they support liver detoxification, but they also are fairly low in calories, but high in nutrients.
Any vegetable will do. Any vegetable. They're your best friends. They really, really are. And, what I used to say, and it might be a little more difficult right now, but at least 6 vegetables a day and a couple of fruits, if you can. I have some red grapes at home now and my apples, and that's going to tide me for the rest of the week. Right. Asparagus I'm going to grill those, with a little bit of oil and a little bit of dash of salt and a little bit of pepper, grilling, 10 minutes, done. A lot of people get fearful about cooking fish. Not fearful, but they don't like it.
Oh.
So, but it's such a good source of protein and good healthy oils. So, vary your diet for sure, but keep these precepts, these concepts of healthy nutrition even now.
Yeah, this is a good training ground for the future, because things are not going to be 100% back to normal in a couple of months or even probably in a couple of years. And so if you can train yourself to be disciplined now, and it only takes about 21 days to make a new habit, you can create some incredibly good eating habits that keep you calmer and more focused and give you higher energy than the super highs and lows of too much sugar consumption.
And it's actually less expensive to eat this way.
Exactly. Yep.
Because you get this density in this food, you get all the nutrients you need. You're not looking for other things to eat. Whereas the snack foods that a lot of people are going towards, you're hungry in half an hour.
We've had that here because Maggie, of course, is a Mexican food blogger, and so we create the salsas and the other things like that. So we do have the chips and others, in part because that's what she takes photographs of and has videos on, the different salsas and things like that. So they are available, but we really haven't been eating much of those at all. We got our first loaf of bread in 2 weeks in yesterday's shipment.
It's creating habits. It's creating habits. And again, this is in many, many ways, it's a perfect opportunity to decompress and slow down and really look at what's important, including what you're eating, what your diet is composed of, because that's going to serve you for the rest of your life. And it's certainly going to help you overcome or prevent any infection, any viral infection, it's not 100% guaranteed.
It's never 100% guaranteed, but what you do want to become, when you boost your immune system, you become an inhospitable host to any organism that's trying to invade you.
Yeah, you have this mechanism.
You do not want the virus or bacteria setting up a party in your system. So you want to be a bad party host. There are no snacks on the table for you, Mr. COVID.
And that's right. But even if you do have a virus, you may not come down with symptoms.
Exactly.
And you're able to fight it.
Right. You want to give yourself the ammunition to fight it. So
you've got enough of a foundation to be healthy and strong. And
you have an energy reserve that you can actually tap into, as well as your immunoglobulins and other things. So I think if you can keep all of your organs functioning at peak efficiency by eating the right stuff and getting plenty of rest and taking care of not binge watching too late into the night, you set yourself up for a greater chance of success in this current battle.
Now, you mentioned immunoglobulins. My husband, I think one couple of things that are keeping him really good and strong, because he's extremely compromised, is he is getting infusions of immunoglobulins every week, a 5-hour treatment every week, plus his dialysis 3 times a week.
Right.
And that's very draining on him, but he has to do it.
It's draining, yet it's sustaining.
Yeah, it's a life and death treatment. So those in combination are keeping him strong. Touch wood. Hope that continues, because so we all need to make an effort to take care of ourselves, and those who are unable to take care of themselves, to help them.
Well, and caregivers have to be especially careful. You see this with doctors and nurses in hospitals, but if you're caring for anyone in your household, and we have one family member who has some significant healthcare issues, you have to take care of that caregiver. We've said it before, which is put your oxygen mask on first before trying to help other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone that's coming here, even the drivers that take my husband to dialysis, they're wearing masks and gloves, and my husband's wearing a mask, which he hates to do, but he has to do. And we just wipe everything down when he gets home. His wheelchair, because he's got a electric wheelchair. So you have to take all these little steps to be safe.
Right.
Yeah.
So speaking of safety and taking little steps, I think we can continue our conversation. We're going to do another one on Friday. Is that correct?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
We will we'll answer some of the questions that are coming in.
Yes, there will be more questions coming in. Unfortunately, somehow today I cannot see your questions. Yes. So if you have any questions or comments, please enter them down below in whichever place you are watching this live broadcast, and we will get to them.
And I hope we've inspired you to really pay attention and or continue doing the good things you're doing. So we have more to share on Friday.
Yep.
Looking forward to
Friday, 1:00. We are suffering from a syndrome of consistency.
That's a good thing. It's a good thing.
All right. We'll be back.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Take
care. Best of health.